Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more English story. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Daniel, and I want to share a story, a deeply personal one about how I transformed my life by learning the power of forcing myself to take action, even when it felt impossible. I wasn't always the person standing before you, confident and passionate. For a long time, I was stuck in a cycle of procrastination, fear, and endless excuses. Every time I faced a challenge or an opportunity, I hesitated, waiting for the perfect time, the right moment, or a sudden burst of motivation that never came. I want to take you back to the time when this cycle controlled my life and how breaking free from it changed everything. The trap of comfort. A few years ago, I was working a job I didn't love, living in a small apartment, and spending most of my evenings on the couch watching TV or scrolling through my phone. It wasn't a terrible life, but deep down, I knew I was capable of more. I dreamed of becoming a motivational speaker, inspiring others to overcome their struggles. But that dream felt distant, like something meant for someone else, not me. I tell myself, I'll start tomorrow. I'll write a plan next week. I'll take action when I feel ready. But readiness never came. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. And my dream remained just that, a dream. The wake-up call. One day, I received an invitation to speak at a local community event. It was a small opportunity, but it was exactly what I had been waiting for, my chance to step into the world of public speaking. And do you know what I did? I hesitated. I came up with 100 reasons to decline. I'm not prepared. I'm not good enough. What if I fail? I was about to say no when I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I looked tired, frustrated, and stuck. That's when it hit me. I was the only thing standing in my way. For the first time, I forced myself to act. I picked up the phone, called the organizer, and said yes before I could overthink it. My heart was pounding, and doubt filled my mind. But the moment, committed, something shifted. The first step. The days leading up to the event were a whirlwind of nerves and self-doubt. I had no idea what I was doing, but I made a decision. I would prepare as much as I could and show up, no matter how scared I felt. When the day arrived, I stood backstage, trembling. My mind was racing with thoughts of failure. But I remembered something I had read once. Action precedes confidence. I took a deep breath, stepped onto the stage, and began to speak. My voice shook at first, but as I continued, something incredible happened. The audience responded. They smiled, nodded, and connected with my words. That experience taught me an important lesson. The hardest step is always the first one. Once you take it, the path becomes clearer. Building momentum. After that event, I realized I couldn't rely on motivation alone. Motivation is fleeting, it comes and goes. What I needed was discipline. I started small. Each morning, I forced myself to get out of bed 30 minutes earlier to work on my speaking skills. I recorded myself practicing speeches, even though it felt awkward and uncomfortable. There were days when I wanted to quit, when the voice in my head whispered, "You're not good enough." But I learned to ignore it. Instead of waiting to feel ready, I made readiness irrelevant. I adopted a mantra: just do it, no matter how you feel. The power of small wins. One of the biggest turning points came when I began to celebrate small victories. Each time I completed a task, no matter how minor, I acknowledged it as progress. Finished a practice session? Win. Sent an email to pitch myself as a speaker? Win. Showed up for a networking event, even though I was nervous? Big win. These small wins added up, building my confidence and momentum. I started to see that progress wasn't about perfection. It was about consistency. Let me share one pivotal moment that truly changed me. A few months after that first speaking event, I was invited to speak a larger conference. This was a big deal, hundreds of people, professional organizers, and seasoned speakers. I was terrified. Every part of me wanted to back out, but remembered the promise I had made to myself. Force yourself to act. I sat down, took a deep breath, and thought about all the progress I had made. I realized that fear was just a sign that I was growing, stepping out of my comfort zone. So, I showed up. I gave it my all. And when the audience erupted into applause at the end, I felt a sense of accomplishment I had never experienced before. That day, I understood something profound. Happiness, success, and growth don't come from waiting for the perfect moment. They come from forcing yourself to take action, even when it's hard. Part 2. Embracing the struggle. As I stood before that cheering crowd after my first major conference speech, something clicked. It wasn't just the applause or the satisfaction of completing my task, it was the realization that I had confronted one of my greatest fears and survived. More than that, I thrived. But if you think that moment marked the end of my struggles, let me assure you, it didn't. In fact, it was just the beginning. Growth isn't a straight path. It's messy, uncomfortable, and full of setbacks. But what I learned next would be just as important as forcing myself to act. The aftermath of success. After the high of that conference, I came back home feeling invincible. I thought, I've got this figured out now. Nothing ca stop me. But I quickly discovered that success can be just as intimidating as failure. The next invitations started rolling in: bigger events, corporate gigs, and even an offer to co-host a workshop. Instead of feeling excited, I felt overwhelmed. What if I'm not as good as they think I am? What if I mess up? The same self-doubt crept back in, this time disguised as imposter syndrome. I began procrastinating again, avoiding emails and delaying commitments. I was slipping into old habits, and I hated myself for it. A wake-up call. One day, I got a call from Marcus, a fellow speaker I had met at the conference. He asked how things were going, and I told him about my struggles. He listened patiently and then said, "Daniel, you're overthinking this. The fear isn't going to go away, but you don't have to let it control you. Remember why you started. Focus on the action, not the outcome." His words hit me hard. I realized I had been so caught up in worrying about how I'd be perceived that I had forgotten why I started this journey in the first place. To inspire other, I needed to get back to basics, to the small, consistent actions that had helped me get this far. Learning to embrace discomfort. Marcus's advice reignited something in me. I decided to push through my fears, one uncomfortable step at a time. I made a list of the things I was avoiding: responding to speaking invitations, recording a promotional video for my website, pitching myself to new clients. I told myself, you don't have to feel ready. You just have to start. So I did. I forced myself to sit at my desk and respond to the emails, even though my hands were shaking. I recorded the video, stumbling over my words but refusing to quit. I reached out to potential clients, knowing some would say no but choosing to focus on the ones who might say yes. Each task felt like climbing a mountain, but with every step, proved to myself that I could do hard things. The power of a support system. One of the most valuable lessons I learned during this time was the importance of having a support system. There was a moment when I felt completely stuck while preparing for a particularly high-stakes event. No matter how much I practiced, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't good enough. I called Marcus again, and he gave me some simple but powerful advice. Stop trying to do this alone. Lean on the people who believe in you. I reached out to my sister, Sarah, who had always been my biggest cheerleader. I asked her to listen to my speech and give me feedback. I called an old mentor who reminded me of my strengths. Their encouragement didn't just help me prepare, it reminded me that I wasn't alone in this journey. Finding joy in the process. As I pushed through my discomfort, I began to notice something unexpected. I started enjoying the process. When I stopped obsessing over the outcome, whether a speech would go perfectly or whether I'd land a new client, I found joy in the act of doing. Writing speeches became an opportunity to reflect on my journey. Practicing in front of a mirror felt like a chance to connect with myself. Even the nerve-wracking moments before stepping on stage became exciting, like the rush before a big adventure. I realized that growth wasn't just about reaching a destination. It was about who I was becoming along the way. Pivotal lesson. One of the most memorable moments during this period came during a workshop I co-hosted with Marcus. We were leading a session on overcoming fear, and one participant asked, "But what if I fail? What if I force myself to act and it doesn't work out?" Marcus turned to me and said, "Daniel, why don't you answer that one?" I paused, thinking back to all the times I had stumbled or fallen short. Then I said, "Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of it. Every time I've failed, I've learned something valuable. Forcing yourself to act isn't about guaranteeing success, about giving yourself a chance to grow." The participant nodded, and I could see a shift in their expression, a glimmer of hope. As I reflected on that moment later, I realized that the advice had given wasn't just for them, it was for me too. Looking back on this phase of my journey, I can see how much I've grown. The fears and doubts didn't disappear, but I learned to face them head on. There was a moment, not long after that workshop, when I stood in front of a crowd of 500 people at a corporate event. As I looked out at the sea of faces, I felt a sense of calm, confidence I had never experienced before. I thought to myself, this is why I do this. This is why I forced myself to act. That moment wasn't the end of my journey, but it was a turning point. It reminded me that the hardest battles often lead to the most rewarding victories. Redefining strength. As I continued pushing myself into uncomfortable situations, began to notice a profound change in how I viewed strength. When I was younger, I thought strength meant being fearless and invincible, but I had come to realize that true strength lies in vulnerability, persistence, and the courage to face your fears head on. The journey wasn't linear. There were moments when self-doubt crept back in, days when I questioned whether all the effort was worth it. But every step forward taught me something new about myself and about what it truly means to live boldly. Learning to say no. One of the hardest lessons I had to learn during this phase was the power of saying no. When you start forcing yourself to act and building momentum, opportunities come flooding in. First, I said yes to Everett, a podcast interview here, a small workshop there, even a last-minute request to help a friend with their project. It didn't take long for me to feel overwhelmed. I was exhausted, stretched thin, and beginning to lose focus on what truly mattered to me. That's when I remembered something Marcus had told me. Every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. Make sure you're saying yes to the right things. It was a hard pill to swallow, but I started practicing the art of saying no. I learned to ask myself, does this align with my goals? Will this help me grow or bring me joy? If the answer was no, I declined, even if it felt uncomfortable. This simple shift gave me the time and energy to focus on what mattered most, building my career as a speaker and helping others through my story. Facing criticism. With growth came visibility, and with visibility came criticism. Not everyone was a fan of my speeches or my message. received emails and comments from people who doubted my authenticity or accused me of oversimplifying complex issues. First, these words cut deep. I found myself replaying negative feedback in my mind, questioning whether I was good enough. But then, I remembered something I had read in a book about resilience. Criticism is inevitable. What matters is how you choose to respond. I decided to view criticism as an opportunity for growth. Instead of taking it personally, I asked myself, is there any truth in this feedback? How can I use this to improve? If the criticism was constructive, I used it to refine my message. If it wasn't, I let it go. This mindset shift was liberating. It reminded me that my worth wasn't defined by others' opinions but by my own commitment to my values and goals. Reconnecting with my purpose. One of the most transformative moments during this period came during a speaking event at a high school. I had been invited to talk to a group of students about overcoming fear and self-doubt. As I looked out at the crowd, saw myself in those young faces, the nervous energy, the uncertainty, the yearning for something more. After my speech, a student approached me. Her name was Mia, and she told me how she had always dreamed of being an artist, but was afraid of failing. She asked me, "How do you know it's worth the risk?" I told her, "You don't. That's the scary part. But you'll never know what's possible unless you try. The only real failure is not giving yourself a chance." Mia's eyes lit up, and in that moment, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. I realized that my purpose wasn't just achieving my own goals, it was about inspiring others to chase theirs. Breaking the cycle of fear. As I reflected on my journey, I saw a pattern that had played out time and time again. 1. Fear would arise. 2. I would hesitate. 3. I would force myself to act despite the fear. 4. The action would lead to growth, which reduced the fear. This cycle wasn't easy, but it was empowering. Every time I pushed through fear, I became a little braver, a little stronger. One of the most challenging moments came when I was invited to speak at an international conference. It was the biggest audience I had ever faced, and I felt completely out of my depth. As I stood backstage, heart pounding, I reminded myself of everything I had learned. Take deep breaths. Focus on the present moment. Trust the process. I stepped onto that stage, and though my voice shook at first, poured my heart into my speech. By the end, I felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment, not because it was perfect, but because I had faced my fear and done it anyway. Celebrating small wins. One of the most important lessons I learned was to celebrate small victories. It's easy to get caught up in the big picture and forget to acknowledge the progress you're making along the way. But every step forward, no matter how small, is a testament to your resilience and determination. I started keeping a journal where I recorded my daily wins, like responding to a difficult Emma, practicing my speech for 30 minutes, saying no to a distraction. These small acts of self-discipline added up, building momentum and reinforcing my belief in my ability to change. As I continued on this journey, I began to see challenges not as obstacles but as opportunities to grow. I started approaching each day with a sense of curiosity, asking myself, what can I learn from this experience? One evening, as I reflected on my progress, I felt a deep sense of gratitude not just for the successes, but for the struggles that had shaped me. Forcing myself to act wasn't about being fearless or perfect. It was about showing up, trying my best, and trusting that each step would bring me closer to the person I wanted to be. As I prepared for my next event, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. This journey wasn't just about achieving my goals, it was about becoming the best version of myself, one small step at a time. Embracing growth through discomfort. Growth often happens in the most uncomfortable moments. As I moved further along my journey, I began to understand this truth more deeply, forcing myself to act, even when I wanted to avoid or delay, taught me that discomfort wasn't the enemy. It was the catalyst for change. The challenge of new heights. One of the pivotal moments during this period was being invited to deliver a keynote speech at a charity gala. This wasn't just another speaking event, it was a room full of influential individuals, and the pressure to impress felt immense. In the past, I might have declined the opportunity out of fear of failing in front of such a high-profile audience. But this time, chose to lean into the discomfort. I spent weeks preparing for the event, rehearsing my speech until I could deliver it with confidence. On the night of the gala, as I stood before the crowd, I felt the familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. But instead of letting it consume me, I took a deep breath and reminded myself, this is your moment. You've prepared for this. Just speak from the heart. The speech wasn't perfect. I stumbled on a few words and lost my place once. But as I looked out into the audience, I saw people nodding, smiling, and even tearing up. By the end, received a standing ovation. That night, I learned an important lesson. You don't have to be perfect to make an impact. Showing up and giving your best is enough. Building resilience. As I continued to challenge myself, I encountered setbacks. Not every project was a success, and not every opportunity led to the outcome I hoped for. One particularly difficult moment came when a speaking engagement I was excited about fell through at the last minute. I had spent weeks preparing, only to have the event canceled due to unforeseen circumstances. First, I felt frustrated and defeated. It seemed like all my hard work had been for nothing. But then, I remembered something Marcus had told me early in my journey. Every setback is a setup for a comeback. Instead of dwelling on the disappointment, I used the time I had spent preparing as an opportunity to refine my skills. I practiced my speech in front of friends, asked for feedback, and recorded myself to identify areas for improvement. By the time the next opportunity came, I was even more prepared and confident. The ripple effect. One of the most rewarding aspects of my journey was seeing how my actions began to inspire others. After one of my speeches, I received an email from a man named Tom who shared how my story had motivated him to pursue his dream of starting a small business. He wrote, "Your words gave me the push I needed to finally take the leap. I've been putting this off for years, but after hearing you talk about forcing yourself to act, I decided to go for it. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to start." Reading Tom's message brought tears to my eyes. It reminded me that the work I was doing wasn't just about me. It was about empowering others to believe in themselves and take action. Letting go of perfection. Another significant lesson I learned during this time was the importance of letting go of perfectionism. For years, I had avoided certain challenges because I was afraid of failing or not meeting my own high standards. But I began to see that striving for perfection often held me back more than it helped. One of the most liberating moments came during a live Q&A session after one of my talks. Someone in the audience asked me a question I didn't know the answer to, and for a split second, panicked. But instead of pretending to have all the answers, I admitted, "You know, I'm not sure about that, but I'd love to explore it further and get back to you." The audience responded with applause, and I realized that people don't expect you to be perfect, they just want you to be authentic. The power of consistency. As I reflected on my progress, I noticed that the small, consistent actions I had taken each day were what truly made the difference. Whether it was practicing mindfulness, sticking to a daily routine, or challenging myself to step out of my comfort zone, these habits built a foundation of resilience and self-discipline. One of my favorite quotes became, "Success isn't achieved in one big leap, it's the result of countless small steps taken with intention and persistence." This mindset helped me stay grounded, even when the road ahead felt daunting. By this point in my journey, I had begun to see myself in a new light. I wasn't just someone who forced himself to act. I was someone who embraced growth, learned from challenges, and inspired others to do the same. As I prepared for my next big event, I felt a sense of confidence I had never experienced before. It wasn't about being fearless or invincible, it was about trusting myself and knowing that I had the strength to handle whatever came my way. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly proud of the person I was becoming. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. In the next chapter, I'll share how I continued to build on this momentum, deepening my understanding of self-discipline and using my experiences to make an even greater impact. Stay tuned. Becoming the architect of my life. As I near the conclusion of my story, I'm reminded of how far I've come since those early days when I felt stuck, lost, and paralyzed by fear. Sharing this journey with you today isn't just about celebrating victories. It's about showing you that change is possible for anyone willing to take that first step and keep pushing forward. Living with purpose. Through years of trial and error, I've come to understand that Life doesn't wait for perfect conditions. If I had waited for the right time to act, I'd still be standing at the starting line, watching others live their dreams while I clung to my excuses, forcing myself to act whether it was tackling a tough conversation, taking on a new challenge, or simply showing up when I didn't feel like it. Taught me the power of discipline. Each small action built momentum, and that momentum created a ripple effect that transformed not just my life, but the lives of those around me. The final push. One of the most significant moments in my journey came when I decided to write a book. For years, people had encouraged me to document my story and share the lessons I'd learned. But the thought of sitting down to write a full-length book felt overwhelming. I had so many doubts. What if no one wanted to read it? What if I wasn't a good enough writer? But then I remembered the very principle I had been living by, forcing myself to act, even when it felt uncomfortable. So I started small. I wrote one paragraph, then one page, and eventually, one chapter. It wasn't easy. There were days when the words wouldn't come, and I felt tempted to give up. But I pushed through, one sentence at a time. When the book was finally published, it was far from perfect. It was real and honest. And to my surprise, it resonated with people in ways I couldn't have imagined. The feedback from readers was overwhelming. Messages poured in from individuals who said the book had given them the courage to take action in their own lives. Some started businesses, others mended broken relationships, and many simply found the strength to believe in themselves again. That experience solidified something I had always suspected. Our struggles and triumphs aren't just for us. They're meant to inspire and uplift others. A life of impact. Looking back, I see how the small, uncomfortable choices I made every day added up to create a life I'm proud of. I've had the privilege of speaking to audiences around the world, coaching individuals who felt stuck like I once did, and witnessing countless transformations. But beyond the accolades and achievements, the greatest reward has been the person I've become, a person who doesn't shy away from challenges, who values growth over comfort, and who embraces each day as an opportunity to make a difference. The message I leave you with, as I stand here today, sharing my story with you, I want you to know this: you don't have to wait for motivation to strike. You don't need all the answers, and you don't need to feel ready. Start where you are, with what you have, and force yourself to take that first step. It won't be easy. You'll face doubts, setbacks, and moments when you want to give up. But I promise you, every small action you take will build strength, resilience, and confidence. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the life you once dreamed of isn't just a possibility, it's your reality. A personal note of gratitude. Thank you for letting me share my journey with you. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this story, it's that you have the power to create the life you want. So go out there, take action, and force yourself to be the person you know you're capable of becoming. The world is waiting for you. Morals of the story. 1. Action precedes motivation. Waiting for the perfect moment or inspiration often leads to stagnation. Taking action, even when it feels uncomfortable, creates momentum and fosters motivation. 2. Discomfort is a sign of growth. Growth happens outside your comfort zone. Embrace discomfort as a necessary part of learning, improving, and achieving your goals. 3. Small steps lead to big changes. Success isn't achieved overnight. Consistent, small actions compound over time, leading to significant transformation. 4. Fear is temporary. Regret is long-lasting. Facing your fears is hard, but the regret of not trying is harder. Take the leap and trust yourself to handle the challenges. 5. Self-discipline is the key to success. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. It's the foundation for achieving your dreams. 6. Your struggles can inspire others. Sharing your journey, both the highs and lows, can encourage others to take action in their own lives. Your story has the power to create change. 7. You are in control. Happiness, success, and personal growth are within your control. By taking responsibility for your actions and choices, you can shape the life you want. Persistence pays off. Challenges and setbacks are inevitable, but persistence and determination always lead to progress. Keep pushing forward, one step at a time. These morals emphasize the power of taking action, embracing challenges, and believing in your ability to create a fulfilling life. I'm so glad you spent this time with me. If you liked the story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Take care, and see you next time.